This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, I ask Joey about a thing only I really understand.
Woo! Let's go, LETSGO. This is what a Joey sounds like, and that is a song that my 3-year-old sings. And this is what an executive producer and Spirit Award winner, Jess Vander, sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess. What a compliment. Thanks, Joey.
Did you ever win a Spirit Award?
No, I won real awards.
Real awards?
I don't even
Shots
know
fired.
Even is. No, I'm just being silly. I think we've talked several times around maybe the idea that no awards are real awards. But it's just such an interesting thing. You know, I prefer stickers. How about stickers?
I think
we should use those more.
I think we spoke about this. I was nominated for 4 superlatives my senior year, and it was like most outgoing, class clown, funniest, and most school spirit. And I wound up winning most outgoing and school spirit. And I was like, why was I nominated for this? I didn't feel I just like went to a bunch of like the sports games just to like have a thing to do in the evenings in the middle of the week. You know, I enjoyed it. I cheered for the team, but I wasn't like, you know, I didn't know the fight song or any of those things, but somehow I won that.
Wow.
Not funniest. Didn't win that.
Not funny.
Rightfully.
Still tracks.
Housekeeping. The only housekeeping, Jess, is maybe referencing the fact that in a recent conversation we had about grabby aliens, the author of said paper, Dr. Robin Hansen, referenced the podcast and shared it on Twitter with his followers and fired a few shots at you. Do you want to rebut?
No, I do not want to rebut.
It was very gentle shots.
I want to say that part of the structure of this show is being comfortable talking about anything, even things that we don't know anything about, or making space for us to say a thing and hopefully not get canceled later. I think that
explore new ideas. What
Professor Hansen called out, honestly, fairly, is that clearly I'm not comfortable talking about aliens. I don't know anything. I know what you've told me, and in fact, I was trying to secondhand explain what we were talking about on the episode to somebody else, and I was like, oh man, this game of alien telephone is really not going very well, because I definitely don't know anything. Joey knows a little more than me, but he also knows not a lot, and then, you know, having source material is definitely helpful. So suffice it to say, hopefully no feelings were hurt. I simply am just being vulnerable with my ignorance and appreciate everyone who listens to this show and has the patience to understand all of that.
Yeah. We should say his point of umbrage was that you at some point said that we don't have the data to support things, and he said that he does have the data.
He does,
but this is a common misconception.
And to be clear, I don't know, but that doesn't mean I can't. You're right. I can't say that it doesn't exist. I just don't know anything. Just remember, it comes down to my weakness.
And in further clarification, he's not saying we have any data about specific aliens. He's talking more about sort of discoveries within physics and, sort of presence of existing and expanding information about the universe. Not like, oh, the Alpha Centaurians are, doing this thing or something like that. So,
long story short,
that's our housekeeping.
Appreciate you, Professor Hansen. Thank you for paying attention to our show, and to all the listeners who pay attention to our show for some reason.
He's super not listening to this.
Yeah, I know. He's definitely not.
Unless we just put Robin Hansen in the show notes.
In the show notes, be like, hey.
Checks this as well.
Hey.
Yeah. Or maybe we're his new favorite show and he's going to start tuning in every week.
He's a huge fan. You know, we still have limited, unlimited edition merch at our bonfire shop. You never can tell when a new fan might emerge.
Bonfire.com/critical nonsense. Go buy your sweatshirts. It's getting to be that season.
I think it's actually bonfire.com/store/critical nonsense. So
there you go. Get your Mind Wine sweatshirt, your fucking A sweatshirt, your So Vanilla sweatshirt. I can tell you they're comfortable.
I can tell you they are comfortable. Yeah.
They're great.
I wear my Jingle Special sweatshirt quite a bit, actually. All right. Joey.
Jess.
Shall we move on?
I'm ready.
Hit
me with your best shot.
Okay. For maybe I can't even tell you how many times, something that I learned in high school is yet again coming to mind in my daily work. And I think I might have even described this thing on the show before. It may be one of the few ideas that I was taught from high school that I still use and reference like pretty frequently to this day. Shout out to Mrs. Henry, my English teacher, for teaching it to me. And it is a very specific concept, and I'll get to the reason why I'm trying to bring it up, but I have to attempt to explain what it is first. And it is the idea of two specific methods of writing your point of view. One method is called the Ping Pong Method, and one method is called the Oreo Cookie Method. Why these symbols are not parallel, I cannot explain to you, and why they are these and not any other symbols, I also cannot explain to you. But the way it works is
this a Mrs. Henry original?
I believe so.
Miss Henry.
And actually, without, it would be fun, without any other context, what do you think this is describing?
The order of operations in constructing a rhetorical argument.
For example.
I mean, this is all guessing. I don't recall you. Maybe you brought it up on a show I wasn't on, but the ping pong method is going back and forth between your assertion and the counterpoint, and the Oreo cookie method is assertion, counterpoint, rebuttal.
So close. Okay, yeah. So basically, let's say you have two things that you're trying to compare. One is A and one is B. The ping pong method would have you put 3 points across those two back and forth. So point 1 for A, followed by point 1 for B. Point 2 for A, followed by point 2 for B, and so on. And then concluding with a final summary of all of that conclusion together. The Oreo cookie method would be points 1, 2, and 3 for A, followed by points 1, 2, and 3 for B, and then all together now, again, concluding all at once. And this idea is, I mean, maybe because the work that we do often includes writing, often includes narrative building and like point of view sharing, oftentimes you're constructing arguments and support in a similar format, or at least in a format. And always my head takes me back to choosing between these two methods. Should I make this ping pong or should I make this Oreo cookie? And, it's silly because the idea in my head is so clear, and I don't know if I've done justice to it explaining it now. But I have also found it very hard to try to very simply communicate this idea to other people. I would like this whole spiel has taken how many minutes? and it feels like there has to be, some simpler, more intuitive way to communicate, methods or frames or points like this. And it's interesting because I think what has happened to me is this thing has just stuck. And I just take this as an example, or really anything that's something for you that's sort of like a inside baseball or ball or like inside knowledge type point. Joey, what is a better way to explain this?
I think so first, like the metaphor structure for remembering a thing, like clearly this was effective for you.
Right. It worked for me.
Yeah. So like the question between remembering something using some sort of like analogy or metaphor as like a memory device is super helpful, right? Yeah. Like the separate question is like how to share it, right? Like a different example of instead of a sandwich cookie method is the shit sandwich method of delivering feedback that most people know, many more people know, but is still just like right, like positive feedback, constructive feedback, positive feedback is the shit sandwich method. But like these things are sort of really helpful, and they're like different ways. I had to remember an unlock code for an elevator on a keypad, and I've learned that just remembering keypad codes in shapes, it makes it way easier than trying to remember numbers. And so like that's sort of like a similar device. It's a square, it's a kitty corner and then a up down or whatever, but this idea of trying to find methods to remember concepts, I think, like, do you need a better method than that? Is your issue just that you can't use it as a device that is sort of universally shared?
It's that I cannot replicate the sort of clarity that I have of this idea very easily with other people. And versus like the example of the other sandwich alternative method that you just described. That is something that everybody knows. Can I just avoid cursing unnecessarily? That's something that's familiar to a lot of people, and it's like a phrase that is known to a lot of people, but because the way I was taught this thing was such a specific and not well-known type of thing, now what? Like, what do you do when the thing you learned is so niche?
I mean, the different question is like, does it need to be shared?
You're like, it's not that useful for other people.
Well, no, not even that. It's just like, in what context do you need to share it versus just apply it, right? I guess there are like, go ahead.
I guess, so something, in fact, I've even wondered, because there are parallels here about like music theory, and again, using sort of like A-B is often done when describing sort of the key sections of a song. Goodness, all the music theory people are cringing at my lack of vocabulary to describe this. But, like that there are these sort of universal frames to describe how you construct a song that everybody knows. To me, this feels like a foundational or very useful writing template, or like a way to construct narrative template. and maybe it's just that I didn't go to college for learning like writing theory and other places that maybe do have formalized frames for this thing. If anything, like this also brings up the idea of anyone who has like unformalized knowledge, not to denigrate the ping pong versus Oreo cookie distinction. Like it's very effective, but it's not sort of like it's not the canon to my understanding anyway. I haven't met other people who didn't go to my high school who know about this idea. And so I think that's a thing that's a really interesting communication barrier for someone who is learning something or has knowledge, but like isn't capable of trying to pass it on because it isn't something that is canonized or standardized.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something about the metaphor not necessarily being sort of telegraphically associated with what you're trying to communicate through the metaphor, right, that makes it a little, right, ping pong versus Oreo cookie are not, like you said from the beginning, are not related constructs. They're not sort of in any way associated with rhetoric or narrative building or anything like that. I think there are other examples that I was trying to think of, like what other things use metaphor in order to communicate constructs. And the first thing that came to my mind was the idea of straw man arguments versus steel man arguments, and that sort of rhetorical approach, which at least are a little bit sort of more metaphorically connected to what they're doing.
Who are these men?
Who are so a straw man argument is like setting up intentionally a counterpoint that is using sort of irrational extremes or like absurdum ad infinitum, right? Like making an argument, taking argument to absurd conclusions in order to deconstruct it. Whereas a steelman argument is trying to sort of take the most logical extension of some assertion and say, like, if that was true, you know, how do you try to find like a grain of truth within an argument by trying to make it indisputable, right? A straw man is easy to burn down, like a steel man is heavy and hard to not go. Like, so the idea is sort of a little bit more metaphorically connected to what you're trying to do in that case versus, but yeah, I don't know. Like, are there other examples where we use metaphor as sort of a primary descriptor of a concept that gets regularly applied?
Like idioms?
Yeah, I'm struggling to think of common examples that get used in this way. Like, invariably, I know that there are, but they're not sort of like leaping to my mind where we use maybe like Schrödinger's cat, right? Which is like reference to, like, you use it as shorthand to carry the entire meaning of the like full extent of the thought experiment of Schrödinger's cat when you're talking about things where like you can't know whether it's true, so both are true. And it gets used a lot in like jokes and is referenced a lot. And so, but in this case, right, like how many people are having discussions about like rhetorical constructions that this needs to be so commonly, you know, in this type of stuff, I think we wind up having many different things that we'll use that are much more idiosyncratic, right? That, you know, I use the word telegraphic. You say I use that word a lot, right?
That's true.
Or, you know, sometimes I talk about like cone of possibilities, or, keeping options open and seeing.
Don't tempt me to read off the list. There's so many good ones.
What's on the list?
Y'all listeners, you should do a scavenger hunt if this is something that would entertain you, which seems like it would maybe not entertain that many people. But wouldn't it be funny if you listen back to as many episodes as you can and count off how many times Joey has said the word telegraphic, also hello, also accretive, also limerence, mutual self-disclosure, intimacy, the phrase hard on the work, kind to each other, the social contract, memetics, positive psychology, the phrase his mother used to say, you looked, excuse the expletive, shit at and hit. These are all concepts that have stuck with you. And in fact, like some of them, like not that I use these things, but it is true. Some of these concepts that maybe mean the most to you by spending time with you maybe take on new meaning, especially if it comes with a story where, the reason that you want to talk about this thing is that it represents this thing and this is how you learned it. I think that...
I mean, this is actually memetics is what you're talking about.
Actually,
right?
It's memetics.
You're trying to pack a lot of meaning into a smaller package, right? Like you're trying to get someone to know the full argument for these two different rhetorical methods by just saying the ping pong method or the Oreo cookie method, right? You're trying to, it becomes sort of an intellectual shorthand. Can you reduce in words to carry larger expanded meaning? And so in some ways it is memetics, right?
I don't even know if I know what memetics are.
It's just memes, right? Like ideas that can be shared and distributed and carry a lot of meaning. And, it's like the idea of like a picture is worth 1,000 words. Like it doesn't have to only be a picture, right? Like the Schrödinger's cat example, like because you can reference the entirety of the thought experiment by just saying those two words becomes in some ways a meme where that you don't have to describe the entire thought experiment in order to reference it.
Okay, but in this universe, there's like a very small number of people who know and can pass along this thing, right? Like, what's the opposite of virality? So its
memetic value is small.
But like, this meme went viral. It's like the opposite of that. It's like, this meme, nobody gets. It is not very popular. But that doesn't mean that it's not great. And that is sort of the thing is like, I guess there's a world where I try to make this idea more catchy if you're breaking things down by distinguishing what is memorable to me from what is maybe better to communicate with others. Like maybe I just need to do a little remix and figure out a way to pass it along. Maybe make it both cookies, but two different types of cookies. Or maybe it's both sports, or it's just one is just like a regular Oreo and then another is like 3 Oreos.
Yeah. Well, it's also like, giving it something that has more cultural gravity as well might make it work, right? Like calling the ping pong method like the clapback method or something like that, right? Like using more relevant language that carries more, cultural gravity and amplitude versus ping pong not being a hyper relevant sport or pastime anymore, at least in the US.
Speak for
Shots
yourself.
fired at ping pong.
Yeah, how could you say that? And how could you even say that about this idea of ping pong as a representative construct? Like, all I want to say is if you have any ideas, you listeners have any ideas, or if you're like, I'm an English major and there's a name for this, and you silly fool, you just know what this is called, that would also be really great. So I really hope that we have some English experts.
Any
out there.
rhetoricians, please inform us.
So interesting. It's so interesting.
Did we use the ping pong or the Oreo method in this discussion?
I don't know. It was just sort of like a ball rolling around on the table where it's like too far in the middle and then you're reaching for it, but your reach isn't so what's it called? Your arm span, your wingspan, whatever. You can't like totally cross the table, and it's like not on a totally level floor, so the ball's just like if it made sounds. And that is the way to describe this and every show that we do.
All right, that's the wrap-up corner.
Can't believe you said ping pong was irrelevant. Wow. Harsh.
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by Rhetorical Sandwiches. Come in for a bite of synecdoche sandwich? Allegory sandwich? Honestly, that would be such an incredible theme for an ice cream shop. You ever know Salt and Straw? How they have like story-themed flavors? This could be that. There could be a sandwich shop for rhetorical devices. Okay, moving on.
As always, we'd like to thank our executive producer and debate champion, Jess Vander.
Thanks, Joey. We'd also like to thank sound engineer and comparative technologist. That was terrible. Alex Contel. I was trying to use something clever.
We'd like to thank programming coordinator and steelman, Les Jacobs.
And thanks to our production crew and straw and salt ice cream flavors. Sorry, Gilbert and Nora Mestridge. I'm sorry.
And as always, thanks, Ellen.
Thanks, Ellen.
Special thanks to metaphors. I'm grateful for metaphors.
To memetics. To Miss Henry. Even if Joey was totally dragging your use of ping pong references. Yeah, I don't know.
I was just saying you could be more culturally relevant.
It could just be more relevant to today. I would also like to thank Oreos for being the pinnacle of packaged cookies, I think. I would say. I can say that, I think. Yeah, I can say that.
And
confident.
Yeah, and thanks to Robin Hanson for being like our new biggest fan.
Okay, suck up, Joey Mudge. He's definitely not listening to this. We should just sneak in little Easter eggs. Robin. Professor Hanson, are you listening to this?
Grabby aliens art. The speed expansion constant that you've selected is inappropriate.
Okay, Joey.
All right. Well, see you later. I love you. Bye.
Bye.